The metallic tang of despair was a constant presence, acrid and suffocating, clinging to the back of my throat like a stale whisper. It had been days, though I couldn't tell you precisely how many. Time had become a blurred, indistinct smear since the afternoon my world had imploded. I was Danielle, or at least I used to be. Danielle, the chef. The one who could coax vibrant flavors from the simplest ingredients, who found poetry in a perfectly seared scallop or the delicate crumble of a shortbread. But that Danielle felt like a ghost, a shimmering mirage from another lifetime. Now I was just a husk. The memory of the meeting still burned, a brand on my soul. "We've had some concerns, Danielle," Mr. Sterling had said, his voice as smooth and cold as polished granite. "Reports of unprofessional conduct, abrasiveness." His gaze, usually so admiring of my creations, had been distant, almost pitying. Unprofessional? Abrasiveness? It was a thinly veiled accusation, spun from the venomous envy of colleagues who couldn't stomach the spotlight I sometimes commanded. They'd twisted my meticulous standards into aggression, my quiet focus into disdain. I'd seen it building, the subtle snubs, the whispered conversations ceasing as I approached, the deliberate undermining of my authority in the kitchen. But I'd been too consumed by the intricate dance of creating, too naive to realize the extent of their malice. But the dishes, the reviews, I'd stammered, my voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to the confident directives I usually issued. He'd merely offered a sympathetic, yet utterly dismissive, shake of his head. "We need a cohesive team, Danielle. And it seems you're not a fit for our current environment." Not a fit. The words echoed in the hollow cavern of my chest, stripping me bare. It wasn't just a job. It was my identity, my passion, my everything. My entire universe revolved around the rhythmic chop of knives, the sizzling symphony of pans, the delicate artistry of plating. Without it, I was adrift, a ship without a rudder, lost at sea. I'd walked out of that opulent restaurant, the clatter of silverware and the murmur of satisfied diners a cruel counterpoint to the shattering silence within me. The city lights, usually a vibrant tapestry, seemed to mock my desolation. I'd come straight back to my tiny rental, a cramped space in a building that smelled faintly of old spices and forgotten dreams. It was supposed to be a temporary stop, a launching pad to culinary greatness. Now it felt like a tomb. The apartment itself had become a mirror of my internal chaos. Dirty dishes piled precariously in the sink, a monument to meals I hadn't the energy to prepare or even order. Clothes lay discarded in heaps, a colorful landscape of despair. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that dared to penetrate the drawn blinds, each one a tiny accusation. I hadn't cleaned. I hadn't wanted to. The thought of exerting any effort felt like scaling a mountain, and I was utterly bereft of strength. My stomach rumbled, a faint, insistent complaint. It had been a while since I'd eaten anything substantial. Days, perhaps. The faint dizziness that had been a constant companion these past few days intensified, a shimmering veil over my vision. I needed to eat, I knew. Survival instinct, I supposed, a dull, insistent thrum beneath the overwhelming lethargy. I'd managed to order takeout hours ago, a mindless reflex, a desperate attempt to quell the gnawing emptiness. I lay on the threadbare carpet, my cheek pressed against the rough fibers, staring blankly at the chipped paint on the baseboard. The world outside felt distant, unreal. My phone, a forgotten relic, lay somewhere beneath a pile of takeout menus. A sudden, sharp ding-dong pierced the oppressive silence. The doorbell. It startled me, a jarring sound in my self-imposed solitude. My takeout. Finally. My limbs protested as I pushed myself up, a slow, creaking ascent. Each step felt heavy, as if I were wading through thick mud. The hunger pangs were sharper now, a frantic clawing. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers clumsy. The door creaked open, revealing not the familiar, weary face of a delivery driver, but a woman. A beautiful woman, standing framed in the dim hallway light. Her hair, a rich mahogany brown, fell in soft waves around her shoulders, framing a face that held a curious blend of gentle kindness and quiet determination. Her eyes, a warm hazel, seemed to observe everything with a steady, unhurried gaze, and a faint, almost shy smile played on her lips. My mind, still sluggish, struggled to place her. Then, a flicker of recognition. Clara. One of my regulars from the restaurant. The one who always ordered the duck confit and left the kindest notes on her comment cards. The one who appreciated the nuances, the subtle hints of thyme and star anise. What was she doing here? My already fragile composure threatened to splinter further. I just wanted my food, wanted to retreat back into the comforting embrace of my despair. This unexpected intrusion felt intrusive, but her presence also carried a strange, quiet weight, a silent question that I wasn't ready to answer. My mind, still swimming in the murky depths of self-pity and hunger, struggled to process Clara's presence. The delivery driver, I'd thought. Not her. She stood there, a vision of composed grace in a simple, well-fitted cardigan, clutching a small, unassuming tote bag. The faint, sweet scent of something baking, ginger, perhaps, wafted from her, a stark contrast to the stale air of my apartment. "Danielle?" she asked, her voice soft, almost a murmur, yet it cut through the fog in my head with surprising clarity. I heard what happened. My cheeks flushed with a heat that had nothing to do with shame and everything to do with mortification. The industry grapevine, a ruthless entity, worked swiftly. Of course she knew. My dismissal wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was public spectacle, a quiet, professional humiliation. I wanted to slam the door, to retreat entirely, but something in her steady hazel eyes held me rooted. They weren't pitying, not exactly. More like understanding. A quiet, knowing sort of empathy that felt both invasive and strangely comforting. "Oh," I managed, my voice raspy from disuse. It was the most articulate I could be. She took a small step forward, her gaze sweeping past me into the disarray of my apartment, the forgotten takeout boxes, the mountain of laundry, the dust motes dancing in the gloom. I felt a fresh wave of embarrassment wash over me. My carefully curated professional persona was shattered, replaced by the unvarnished reality of my personal chaos. "I brought you something," she said, holding up the tote bag slightly. "Just some things." And I thought, well, if you needed anything, I could help. My first instinct was to refuse, to insist I was fine, that I didn't need charity. But the words caught in my throat. I wasn't fine. And the idea of help, however foreign, held a strange appeal in my utter helplessness. My usual sharpness, my quick wit, had deserted me. "Oh," I said again, feeling utterly ridiculous. Without waiting for a proper invitation, or perhaps sensing my inability to offer one, Clara stepped inside. She didn't flinch at the mess, didn't make a sound of judgment. Her gaze remained calm, steady. She walked past the overflowing laundry basket, past the stacks of forgotten mail, directly to my small, grimy kitchen counter. "Let me just put these away," she said, her tone utterly practical. She pulled out a small container of freshly baked muffins, still warm, and a carton of milk, then a small bag of fresh produce. "And maybe we could clear some of this?" She gestured vaguely at the piled dishes in the sink. My jaw might have actually dropped. No one had ever offered to clean my apartment. My friends usually navigated the piles with a sigh, offering to order pizza, but never wielding a sponge. This felt audacious. And yet, there was something undeniably alluring about her quiet confidence, her lack of fuss. "You don't have to," I mumbled, though a part of me desperately wanted her to. Clara simply smiled, a gentle, reassuring curve of her lips. "I don't mind. Sometimes, a little tidying can help clear the mind, don't you think?" She didn't wait for an answer, just began to move with a quiet efficiency. She started with a stack of newspapers by the door, folding them neatly, placing them in a designated spot. Then, she moved to the counter, gathering empty coffee mugs and stray spice jars. I watched her, a silent observer in my own home. Her movements were deliberate, graceful. She wasn't just cleaning, she was restoring order, one quiet action at a time. It was unnerving, this unexpected invasion of my privacy, yet it also felt like a soft unraveling of the tight knot of despair that had bound me. Then, she turned to the sink. "Do you have dish soap?" she asked, her back to me, already running warm water. I pointed vaguely. She found it, squirted a generous dollop into the water, and began to wash. The soft clinking of plates, the gentle splash of water, it was a foreign symphony in my usually silent, disheveled apartment. "I thought," she said, still focused on the task, "that you might be hungry." I made a simple pasta. "It's not one of your creations, I know," she added, a hint of self-deprecating humor in her voice, "but it's warm." She pulled a container from her tote bag, a modest serving of pasta, smelling faintly of garlic and herbs. She heated it on my stove, managing to find a clean pan amongst the clutter. The aroma, simple and homey, was a stark contrast to the complex, sophisticated scents I usually worked with. It was ordinary, and yet, in that moment, it smelled like salvation. She placed a bowl in front of me, along with a glass of water. "Eat," she instructed gently. I picked up the fork, my hands unsteady slightly. The first bite was a revelation. It was, as she'd said, simple. Not refined. Not groundbreaking. The pasta was a little soft, the sauce a bit bland. It was objectively mediocre. But it was warm, it was food, and it was made for me. A wave of unexpected emotion washed over me, a feeling so potent it made my eyes sting. It wasn't about the culinary finesse, it was about the intention. It was a tangible act of kindness, a quiet defiance against the bitterness that had consumed me. I ate in silence, Clara continuing her quiet work, wiping down the counters, putting things in their rightful places. The simple act of her presence, her calm, unassuming competence, was slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning to chip away at the suffocating weight of my despair. Who was this woman? And why was she here, patiently piecing together the fragments of my broken world? Clara didn't just appear that day and vanish. She returned. The next morning, the day after, and the one after that. It became a quiet, reassuring rhythm in the desolate landscape of my routine. Each visit was an echo of the first. She would arrive with a small container of food, sometimes a hearty soup, other times a humble casserole, and set about, without fuss or demand, to bring a semblance of order to my chaotic apartment. I observed her, often from the worn armchair in the living room, a silent witness to her methodical grace. Her movements were never hurried, never frantic. She would fold laundry with a precision that bordered on artistry, arrange books on the cluttered shelves, and wipe down surfaces until they gleamed, all while humming a low, tuneless melody that was barely audible but always present. My home, once a monument to my unraveling, slowly began to breathe again under her gentle ministrations. "You really don't have to," I'd often murmur, a reflexive protest. She would just offer that same quiet, reassuring smile, her hazel eyes meeting mine with an unwavering steadiness. "It's all right, Danielle. A little company, a little help, it's good for the soul." Her words were simple, yet they carried a profound weight, hinting at a depth of understanding I hadn't expected. We shared meals, usually her cooking. I'd learned quickly that while Clara's heart was definitely in the right place, her palate was less developed. Her spaghetti sauce was often missing a certain acidity, her roasted vegetables a depth of caramelization. But I never pointed it out. Instead, I'd find myself adding a pinch of salt, a dash of my own carefully guarded spices, under the guise of just enhancing the flavor. She'd taste it, her eyes widening slightly. "Oh, that's much better. What did you do?" And I'd offer some vague, culinary explanation, enjoying the subtle shift in her expression, the quiet appreciation in her gaze. It felt strangely intimate, this shared ritual of humble meals and subtle culinary adjustments. Slowly, the tightly coiled spring of my despair began to loosen. Clara's unwavering presence, her refusal to be deterred by my silences or my occasional bouts of sullenness, was a balm. She didn't pry, didn't bombard me with questions about the restaurant or my future. She simply was. And in her being, she created a safe space, a quiet harbor where I could begin to tentatively unfurl. One afternoon, a few weeks into this new routine, she found me staring blankly at my chef's whites, still crisp and clean in their dry cleaning bag, a painful relic of a life I'd lost. A fresh wave of bitterness washed over me, the injustice of it all, the betrayal. It wasn't fair, Clara, I heard myself say, the words escaping my lips before I could censor them.
My voice was tight, raw.
They hated that I was good, that I saw things differently. They called it abrasive, but I was just trying to create something beautiful, something extraordinary. Clara stopped her quiet task of polishing the wooden surface of my small dining table. She turned, her cloth still in hand, and looked at me. Her expression was devoid of judgment, only a deep, quiet listening. I poured everything into that kitchen. I continued, the dam breaking. The story spilled out, the whispered slights, the subtle sabotages, the calculated misinformation spread about me. The humiliation of being dismissed, not for incompetence, but for being too passionate, too skilled, too me. My voice cracked with suppressed tears, the sting of betrayal fresh as the day it happened. She listened, utterly absorbed, her head tilted slightly, her hazel eyes unwavering. When I finally ran out of words, my throat aching, she walked over and sat on the armrest of my chair, close enough that I could feel the gentle warmth radiating from her. "It sounds like a terrible ordeal, Danielle," she said, her voice soft-measured. "And it sounds like you were deeply hurt." She didn't offer platitudes, didn't say it'll be okay or move on. Instead, she simply acknowledged the pain, validating my experience in a way no one else had. "But your passion, that's not something they can take from you. That fire, it's still there. I saw it, even when you served me that duck confit. It was in every plate." Her words, delivered so calmly, so sincerely, were like a cool cloth on a fevered brow. She didn't dismiss my anger, but she refocused it, gently nudging me towards the inherent strength that lay beneath the layers of hurt. "You're a truly gifted chef, Danielle," she continued, her voice gaining a quiet conviction. "Anyone who's tasted your food knows that. And that kind of talent, it doesn't just disappear." Her belief in me, voiced with such quiet certainty, felt like a lifeline. In the depths of my despair, I'd forgotten that. I'd let their bitter whispers overshadow the truth of my own skill. Looking at Clara, at her serene face, her steady gaze, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. A tiny, fragile spark, but a spark nonetheless. Her steady, unwavering presence was not just cleaning my apartment. It was slowly, meticulously, helping me to pick up the pieces of my shattered self. We were becoming friends, yes, but it felt like something more profound was taking root in the quiet spaces between our words, in the shared comfort of her gentle routine. Days blurred into a few weeks, marked not by external events, but by the quiet transformations within my apartment and, more importantly, within myself. The piles of laundry had vanished, replaced by neatly folded stacks in the dresser drawers. The kitchen counters, once overflowing with forgotten remnants, now gleamed, reflecting the morning light. The pervasive scent of stale air and despair had been slowly, imperceptibly, replaced by the faint, clean fragrance of lemon polish and, occasionally, the comforting aroma of Clara's simple meals. The apartment, once a tomb, had begun to feel like a home again. And Clara was at the heart of that change. Her routine of daily visits continued, but the dynamic between us shifted. My initial resistance had long since melted away, replaced by a quiet anticipation. I found myself listening for her soft knock, a subtle tightening in my chest, a curious flutter in my stomach. It was an unfamiliar sensation, this longing for someone's presence, someone who wasn't tied to my culinary world. She encouraged me, gently, to cook again. "Why don't you show me how you'd really do it?" she'd suggest one afternoon, gesturing towards my pristine kitchen. "I'm always learning." The challenge, presented so casually, felt less like pressure and more like an invitation. Hesitantly, I agreed. I pulled out my knives, the familiar weight of comfort in my hand, and began to chop vegetables. The rhythmic thud of the blade against the cutting board was a soothing balm, awakening muscle memory. The scent of fresh garlic sizzling in olive oil, the fragrant steam rising from a simmering broth, these were the sensory anchors of my identity, the language I spoke fluently. As I cooked, explaining the subtle art of building flavors, the importance of precise timing, the nuanced balance of ingredients, I felt a spark ignite within me. It wasn't the roaring fire of my past ambition, but a gentle, persistent flame. Clara watched, rapt, asking intelligent questions, her hazel eyes bright with genuine interest. Her appreciation wasn't just polite, it was deep, intuitive. She understood the effort, the artistry, and in her gaze, I found a reflection of my own worth, a quiet affirmation that transcended the harsh judgments of my former colleagues. As I began to cook more, the familiar world of flavors and textures slowly drew me back. It was Clara who carefully organized my spice rack, who encouraged me to sketch out new recipe ideas in a small notebook she bought for me. Her unwavering support was a steady hand, guiding me back to my passion, step by painstaking step. And as I reconnected with my craft, I also found myself observing Clara in a new, more nuanced light. She wasn't just the compassionate stranger who cleaned my apartment. She was Clara. I began to notice the way her rich mahogany hair caught the sunlight when she sat by the window, illuminating subtle flecks of gold. I'd observe the precise, almost elegant way she held a book, her brow furrowed in concentration as she read, occasionally letting out a soft, almost inaudible hum. The quiet rhythm of her breathing when we sat in comfortable silence, the gentle curve of her hand as she reached for a teacup, these small details began to etch themselves into my awareness, taking up residence in the quiet corners of my mind. There was a nascent feeling, a gentle pull, that I couldn't quite name. It was distinct from friendship, deeper than gratitude. When she would laugh, a soft, melodic sound, a strange warmth would bloom in my chest. When her hand brushed mine accidentally as we reached for the same object, a fleeting jolt, like static electricity, would travel up my arm, leaving a lingering awareness. I found myself anticipating her arrival each day, the simple act of her presence becoming the unexpected highlight of my solitary existence. My heart would give a curious little leap at the sound of her approaching footsteps in the hallway. I'd catch myself smiling for no apparent reason, just thinking about the quiet way she'd stack the washed dishes or the thoughtful expression on her face as she considered a recipe. This new emotional landscape was unfamiliar territory, both unsettling and exhilarating. It was a gentle stirring, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my healing, suggesting a melody I hadn't yet learned to play. Clara had not only helped me clean my physical space, she was slowly, meticulously, illuminating the forgotten corners of my heart, revealing a yearning I hadn't known I possessed. My life, once defined by the sharp edges of professional ambition and then the dull ache of loss, was now softening, taking on the warm, inviting curves of an unexpected, burgeoning connection. The subtle dance between us continued, a choreography of unspoken sentiments and increasingly tender gestures. My days, once a monochrome canvas of despair, were now painted with the vibrant anticipation of Clara's visits, the quiet contentment of her presence. The apartment had transformed into a haven, a place where I felt safe to be myself, flaws and all, under her steady, understanding gaze. Our conversations deepened, evolving past the surface pleasantries and into the shared terrain of personal histories and quiet dreams. I found myself revealing the layers of fear that still clung to me, the fear of failure, the lingering sting of injustice, the daunting prospect of rebuilding a career from scratch. Clara listened, truly listened, with an empathy that made me feel entirely seen. She never interrupted, never judged, just offered a safe space for my vulnerability. In return, she shared glimpses into her own world. I learned of her quiet aspirations, her passion for community work, her belief in the power of connection. She spoke of how she found satisfaction in helping others, in creating spaces where people felt supported and valued. There was a quiet strength in her, a bedrock of compassion that underpinned her outwardly composed demeanor. Her passion, though different from mine, resonated with a similar intensity, a shared drive to make a positive impact in the world, however small. One evening, after a particularly honest conversation about the lingering feelings of injustice that still occasionally flared within me, a profound quiet settled between us. I had just finished recounting a particularly painful memory of being undermined by a jealous colleague, the bitterness still fresh in my voice. The setting sun cast long, amber shadows across the living room, bathing us in a soft, ethereal glow. Clara, who had been sitting opposite me, her hands clasped loosely in her lap, shifted. She reached out, her fingers warm and gentle, and placed her hand softly over mine, which rested on the arm of the sofa. The touch was light, almost fleeting, yet it sent an unfamiliar warmth through me, a subtle jolt that traveled up my arm and settled deep in my chest. It was a warmth that had nothing to do with the setting sun, and everything to do with her. "You're stronger than you think, Danielle," she murmured, her voice a soft murmur, barely above a whisper. Her thumb brushed lightly against the back of my hand, a small, comforting motion. To have been through all that and still have that passion burning, that takes immense strength. Her words were not a direct offer of comfort, but a powerful affirmation of my resilience, a recognition of the fight still left in me. And the touch, the quiet, unwavering connection of her hand on mine, it was a language all its own. In that moment, the room felt charged with an unspoken understanding, a nascent truth taking root between us. It was a silent conversation, a profound intimacy that transcended words. I felt a subtle shift in the air, a delicate blossoming of something new, a tender awareness that pulsed beneath the surface of our comfortable friendship. It was a sense of being truly understood, truly cared for, in a way I hadn't experienced before. My heart, once a guarded fortress, felt a tremor, a quiet yielding to the profound tenderness of her touch and her unwavering belief in me. This wasn't just friendship anymore. It was something deeper, something that tasted like unspoken flavors, rich and complex and utterly compelling. The quiet warmth of Clara's touch, the profound understanding in her hazel eyes, lingered long after that evening. It was a subtle shift, a new layer added to the tapestry of our growing connection, one that hummed beneath the surface of our daily interactions. The unspoken tension between us, once a delicate thread, now felt like a silken ribbon, drawing us closer, tighter, in a dance of glances and shared smiles that held deeper meanings. My thoughts, once solely consumed by the intricacies of culinary creation or the lingering bitterness of my past, now frequently drifted to Clara. I'd find myself replaying moments, the way she'd tilt her head when listening intently, the soft sound of her laughter, the gentle way she'd stack clean plates. Each small detail became a precious jewel, carefully observed and cherished. This new focus was both disorienting and utterly captivating. One rainy afternoon, the kind where the sky hung heavy and gray, and the drumming of raindrops against the window pane created a soothing, rhythmic backdrop, we found ourselves in comfortable silence. I was sketching out a new recipe for a spiced apple tart, the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg already vivid in my imagination, while Clara sat on the sofa opposite me, engrossed in a book. The air in the apartment was cool and damp, a perfect atmosphere for introspection. I glanced up from my notebook, my gaze drifting across the room to Clara. She was lost in her reading, a stray strand of mahogany hair falling across her forehead. I studied her profile, the gentle curve of her nose, the soft line of her jaw, the way her lips were slightly parted in concentration. There was a serene beauty about her, a quiet strength that resonated deeply within me. My heart gave a curious little thump, a feeling of both nervousness and an undeniable pull. As if sensing my gaze, Clara slowly raised her head. Her eyes, warm and intelligent, met mine across the small space. A quiet moment stretched between us, thick with unacknowledged feeling, the rhythmic patter of the rain outside the only sound. In that extended silence, the air crackled with a delicate electricity, a tension that was both exquisite and terrifying. My breath hitched. My mind, usually so analytical, so precise, went utterly blank. All I could perceive was Clara, her gentle presence, the depth of emotion reflected in her eyes. An impulse, sudden and potent, surged through me, bypassing all logic, all hesitation. It was a gravitational pull, an undeniable force. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I leaned forward, my gaze locked with hers. Clara didn't flinch. Her eyes remained steady, unwavering, and then, with a quiet grace, she leaned in too, meeting me halfway. Our lips connected in a soft, brief touch. It was a quiet acknowledgement of something deeper than friendship. No grand gesture, just a gentle confirmation of the bond we'd been building. My heart beat fast against my ribs, a steady drumbeat in my ears. I felt a quiet surprise, a mix of nerves and a profound sense of rightness, that this was happening here, with Clara. When we drew apart, only inches separating us, the world seemed to hold its breath. Her hazel eyes were wide, soft, reflecting a vulnerability that mirrored my own. A flush crept up my neck, and I knew my cheeks must be crimson. The silence that followed was different now, infused with a new, exquisite intimacy, a delicate understanding that had just been born between us. It was awkward, yes, but undeniably real, a quiet, profound blossoming in the quiet space of my apartment, in the quiet depths of my heart. The awkward, tender kiss lingered on my lips, a ghost of warmth and wonder. We didn't immediately discuss it, couldn't, not with the delicate tension still humming between us. Yet a new layer of intimacy settled into our interactions, a silent acknowledgement of the boundary we had just crossed. My internal world, already in flux, now spun with a dizzying mix of confusion and exhilaration. For so long, my emotions had been bound by the strictures of the kitchen, the precise measurements, the controlled heat, the predictable outcomes. Love, particularly this kind of love, was uncharted territory. It felt expansive, untamed, completely unlike any relationship I'd ever envisioned for myself. My past connections had been fleeting, secondary to my culinary pursuits. But Clara was different. She had walked into my chaos and, with quiet patience, helped me piece myself back together. The thought of this new, tender connection, so organic and unexpected, filled me with both trepidation and a profound, quiet joy. I found myself replaying the moment of the kiss, dissecting every micro-expression on Clara's face, every nuance of her gentle response. Had I misread something? Was it merely an impulse on her part, an extension of her pervasive kindness? But then I'd remember the way her eyes had softened, the way she had leaned in, and a warmth would spread through me, confirming that it was indeed mutual, however tentative. Clara, ever patient, simply continued to be herself. She didn't press, didn't make demands. Her actions, as always, spoke volumes. Her gaze held a new softness when it met mine, her smiles a touch more knowing. She still came to visit, still brought her quiet order into my life, but now there was a subtle undercurrent, a deeper unspoken understanding that flowed between us. One particularly crisp morning, as we sat sipping coffee Clara had made, a perfectly brewed, unpretentious blend, a thought, still nascent but rapidly gaining clarity, solidified in my mind. The old restaurant was a closed chapter, a painful memory.
But
My passion for cooking, rekindled and carefully nurtured by Clara, was very much alive. I wanted to cook again, truly cook, on my own terms, free from the constraints and toxicity of my past. I took a deep breath, the steam from my coffee warming my face. Clara was watching me, her head tilted slightly, a silent invitation to speak. "I've been thinking," I began, my voice a little steadier than I expected, about opening my own place. The words, once a distant dream, now felt tangible, real. A small restaurant. Something intimate. Where I can just cook. Really cook. Without the politics. Without the pretense. Clara's eyes, those warm hazel eyes I'd come to cherish, widened slightly. Then a slow, radiant smile spread across her face, lighting up her features. It was a smile of pure, unbridled excitement and support, a mirroring of the hope that had just begun to bloom within me. "Danielle," she breathed, her voice filled with quiet delight. That's wonderful." Her immediate, unwavering enthusiasm was a powerful affirmation. It wasn't just my dream. It suddenly felt like our dream. The image formed in my mind, a cozy space, the scent of fresh herbs and roasting vegetables, the quiet hum of happy diners, and Clara, moving gracefully through the front of house, her calm presence a perfect counterpoint to my intense focus in the kitchen. I don't know where to start. I admit it, a flicker of my old insecurity resurfacing. The business side of things, it's so daunting. Clara reached across the table, her hand resting gently on my forearm, a familiar, comforting gesture that now held a deeper resonance. "You start with the idea," she said, her voice firm, "and you have a brilliant one. The rest we can figure out. Together." The word hung in the air. Together. It resonated deep within me, settling into the newly opened spaces of my heart. It wasn't just about a restaurant anymore. It was about building a future, a life, with her. Her belief in me, her willingness to step into this daunting venture by my side, solidified something profound. The restaurant wasn't just a place to cook. It was becoming a tangible representation of our combined hopes, a physical manifestation of the unexpected connection that had bloomed from the ashes of my despair. My culinary vision, once a solitary pursuit, now felt inextricably intertwined with her presence, with the promise of a shared journey. Chapter 8. Building a Foundation. Clara's enthusiastic declaration, "We can figure out, together," had been the catalyst. The abstract notion of my own restaurant swiftly transformed into a shared project, a tangible goal we could both grasp. The fear that had initially prickled at the edges of my ambition began to recede, replaced by a surge of purpose, bolstered by her unwavering confidence. Our discussions moved beyond quiet confessions and into the practicalities of blueprints and budgets. My living room, once a sanctuary of recovery, became a war room of sorts. We spread out maps of neighborhoods, highlighted potential rental spaces, and filled notebooks with pros and cons lists. Clara, with her quiet meticulousness and pragmatic approach, was a revelation. While my mind was brimming with menu concepts, plating ideas, and the perfect ambience, she was delving into zoning laws, lease agreements, and potential startup costs. "We need to consider overhead," she'd say, her brow furrowed in thought, pointing to a column of figures. "And a realistic projection for the first 6 months." I, who usually found such details mind-numbingly tedious, listened intently, sketching out a rustic wooden bar or a cozy banquette seating arrangement on the margins of her spreadsheets. Her grounding presence was the perfect anchor for my sometimes soaring creative mind. She translated my culinary dreams into actionable steps, breaking down the daunting mountain into manageable hills. We spent hours together, poring over design ideas. I'd show her images of warm, inviting interiors, discussing textures and lighting. She'd nod, offering thoughtful suggestions. "Perhaps a touch more green," she'd muse, "to bring in a sense of freshness, like the herbs you use." Or, "These chairs look beautiful, but are they comfortable for a long evening?" Her practical insights were invaluable, tempering my artistic vision with a necessary dose of reality. The name for our restaurant came naturally, an echo of Clara's early observation of my cooking, the scent of thyme. It felt right, capturing both the essence of my culinary soul and the subtle, comforting aroma that had filled my apartment during my early days of healing. There were moments of stress, of course. The sheer scale of the undertaking was, at times, overwhelming. One afternoon, after a particularly frustrating phone call with a landlord, I felt a familiar wave of doubt wash over me. Maybe this is too much, I confessed, dropping my head into my hands. Maybe I'm not cut out for the business side of it. Maybe it was just a silly dream. Clara immediately came to my side, her touch gentle as she placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's not silly, Danielle," she said, her voice firm, quiet, yet resonating with conviction. "It's a bold dream, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. But you're not doing this alone." She knelt beside me, her gaze steady, unwavering. "Remember what you told me about that perfectly seared scallop? It takes focus, precision, and sometimes you have to adjust the heat. This is no different." Her simple analogy, drawing on my own professional language, cut through my panic. She understood me, intuitively, knowing exactly how to reframe the challenge. In those moments, I saw her not just as a friend, or as the woman whose kiss had stirred something profound within me, but as a true partner. Someone who saw my vulnerabilities and offered strength without judgment. Someone who believed in my vision as much as I did. Our bond, forged in the quiet acts of kindness and then sealed with a tentative kiss, deepened with every shared decision, every challenge faced together. The restaurant was more than just a business venture. It was a testament to our combined strengths, a physical manifestation of the trust and understanding that had grown between us. It was a foundation, carefully laid, brick by painstaking brick, for a future we were building not just for ourselves, but for each other. And in the quiet understanding that passed between us, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this was where I was meant to be, with her, creating something beautiful, together. The subsequent months were a whirlwind of activity, a vibrant blur of wood dust, paint fumes, and the constant hum of machinery. The scent of time was no longer a collection of sketches and spreadsheets. It was taking physical form, brick by brick, beam by beam. Every decision, from the precise shade of sage green on the walls to the texture of the reclaimed wood tables, was a shared endeavor, a testament to our burgeoning partnership. I immersed myself in the heart of what I knew best, the kitchen. My notebooks filled with new recipes, ideas for innovative twists on classic comfort food, and menus that reflected my passion for fresh, seasonal ingredients. The process of creation was exhilarating, a rediscovery of the joy that had been so cruelly stolen from me. I spent hours perfecting a slow-braised lamb with rosemary, refining the delicate balance of spices for a cardamom panna cotta, and experimenting with a vibrant beetroot risotto. The kitchen, once a source of professional pain, now pulsed with renewed life, a canvas for my culinary artistry. Clara, meanwhile, proved to be an indispensable force in managing the myriad logistical details. She navigated permits and inspections with a calm efficiency that I could only marvel at. She sourced local suppliers, negotiated contracts, and carefully curated the front-of-house aesthetic, ensuring every detail contributed to the warm, inviting atmosphere we envisioned. Her quiet determination, her ability to anticipate problems and find elegant solutions, was a constant source of strength and admiration for me. She possessed a remarkable knack for making the complex seem manageable, for smoothing out the inevitable wrinkles that arose. There were still moments of stress, sharp edges in the otherwise harmonious process. A delayed delivery, a budget overrun, a plumbing issue that threatened to derail our timeline. In the past, such setbacks would have sent me spiraling into frustration and self-doubt. But now Clara was there. When I would grow taut with anxiety, she would approach with a calm query, a thoughtful suggestion, or simply a steady presence that reminded me we were facing it together. Our communication, once reliant on subtle gestures, had become more fluid, our understanding deeper, a silent shorthand developing between us that often negated the need for lengthy explanations. One particularly long day, spent hauling boxes of new equipment and overseeing the installation of the gleaming new stoves, left us both exhausted but exhilarated. The scent of fresh paint was fading, replaced by the subtle, exciting aromas of new wood and polished metal. The kitchen, my domain, was finally complete, an exquisite blend of professional functionality and warm, inviting design. As the last worker left, the evening settling around us, we stood together in the main dining area, bathed in the soft glow of the newly installed pendant lights. The tables were set, the chairs arranged, waiting for the first guests. It was an empty space, yet it felt brimming with potential, with the promise of countless meals and shared moments. Clara turned to me, her face illuminated by the soft light, her hazel eyes shining with a profound satisfaction. "It's going to be beautiful, Danielle," she said, her voice a quiet conviction, filled with an emotion that mirrored my own. "Everything you've dreamed of." My heart swelled, a potent mix of gratitude, pride, and an overwhelming surge of affection. I reached out, taking Clara's hand, her fingers warm and firm in mine. Her presence, her unwavering belief, her quiet strength, she had not only helped me rebuild my career, but she had helped me rediscover myself. This restaurant, the Scent of Time, was more than just a business. It was a testament to our shared journey, to the healing that had taken place, and to the unexpected, profound love that had blossomed from the ashes of my despair. It was a symbol of our resilience, a quiet monument to a future we were crafting, hand in hand, a future seasoned with hope and the enduring fragrance of connection. The grand opening of The Scent of Time arrived, not with a flourish of trumpets, but with the quiet, excited hum of a new beginning. I was a whirlwind of motion in the kitchen, orchestrating my team with a renewed sense of purpose and a calm confidence that had been absent for too long. The rhythmic chop of knives, the sizzling symphony of pans, the delicate artistry of plating, these were the familiar sounds of my soul, finally set free to create. Each dish that left my path was a reflection of my heart, infused with the passion and vulnerability I had rediscovered. Clara, radiant in her calm efficiency, moved gracefully through the front of house. Her presence was a soothing balm, greeting guests with her gentle smile, ensuring every detail contributed to the warm, inviting ambience. She anticipated needs before they were voiced, her hazel eyes taking in everything, her quiet interactions with the diners creating an atmosphere of genuine hospitality. Our partnership flowed seamlessly, a delicate balance of my intense, creative energy in the back and her serene, grounding presence in the front. We were two halves of a whole, our strengths complementing each other perfectly, creating a space that felt genuinely authentic and welcoming. In the brief lulls between rushes, I would steal a glance into the dining room, watching Clara as she spoke with a guest, her hands gesturing subtly, her eyes alight with warmth. A quiet sense of profound belonging would settle over me. From the depths of isolation and betrayal, I had found not just a renewed purpose, but a profound connection, a love that had bloomed in the most unexpected of places. It was a love that had nurtured me back to health, a quiet, steady flame that warmed the deepest parts of my soul. Our life together quickly settled into a rhythm, a delicate balance of professional ambition and personal connection. We would spend long hours at the restaurant, discussing menus, future plans, and the day's successes and challenges. Then, we would retreat to our small apartment, a haven of shared quietude, where the lingering sense of thyme and roasted garlic often mingled with the clean smell of Clara's favorite lavender candle. One evening, after a particularly busy service, we sat on the sofa, simply existing in comfortable silence. The city outside hummed softly, a distant symphony. I leaned my head against Clara's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of her heart, the soft warmth of her presence. The journey from the floor of my messy apartment, starving and broken, to this moment felt like a lifetime. I had been adrift, stripped of my identity, convinced I had nothing left. But Clara had seen past the wreckage, had offered a hand, not of pity, but of steadfast belief. She had not only helped me rebuild my career, but had opened my heart to a love I hadn't known I yearned for, a quiet, tender affection that felt like coming home. "I wouldn't be here," I murmured softly, my voice barely audible, "if it wasn't for you." Clara shifted slightly, wrapping an arm around me, a a comforting embrace. "You would have found your way, Danielle," she whispered, her voice a soft murmur against my hair. "You have too much light to stay in the dark. I just helped clear the path a little." Her humility, her quiet strength, continued to amaze me. She never took credit, always reflected the praise back. But I knew the truth. She had been the anchor, the quiet architect of my healing, the unexpected ingredient that had transformed my life from ash to warmth. The scent of time continued to thrive, a testament to our combined vision and effort. It was more than just a restaurant. It was a living, breathing entity, a space where people found comfort and joy in the food I created and the welcoming atmosphere Clara cultivated. Our love, like the restaurant, was still growing, still evolving. It was a quiet, unfolding narrative, a delicious slow burn, rich with unspoken understanding and shared dreams. Our future stretched before us, an open-ended promise of continued growth, of learning and loving side by side. We had found each other in the wreckage of my past, and together, we were building a future, one perfectly seasoned dish, one quietly understood glance, one shared moment at a time.